Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for finding time and joining today's webinar. My name is Sinto Sunario, and I'm a lecturer at Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas 11 Maret. I will be your moderator today. Before we start this webinar, I would like to remind all the participants to take attendance in the link provided by the host in order to get your certificate of this webinar. Okay, let's begin this webinar. Our topic today is advance your academic career by publishing a family business teaching case with Sage. Before we start, let me explain how you can talk to us during this webinar. So if you have any question, just write them to chat in the chat box and I will bring them up. We also have question and answer session at the end. Please don't forget to write your name and institution. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to our speakers today. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Marlene Dillman. Dr. Marlene is an expert of strategy and governance in Asian Family Business Groups. Dr. Marlene leads the Asian Family Business Program at National University of Singapore Business School. She also leads the school joint program with Astra International. Her works have been widely recognized and mentioned in the global media and reputable journal. Good morning, Dr. Marlene. Nice to meet you again.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you for joining with us today. We are also joined by Rachel Taliavero. Rachel is an acquisition and developmental editor at Sage Publication. With nearly a decade of editorial experience in academic and scholarly publishing, she oversees SBC's commissioning strategy and review processes. Good evening, Rachel. Glad to see you again.
Hello, great to see you. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for being with us today. Dr. Marlene and Rachel will give us their presentation in today's webinar. Dr. Marlene will explain to us how to write a good teaching case, tips and tricks. This presentation will be about 25 minutes. And then Rachel will continue to present the process of publishing teaching case. It will take about 15 minutes. After the presentation, we will have question and answer for about 20 minutes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Marlene Dillman and Rachel Taliavero for giving us the presentation. Dr. Marlene and Rachel, the time is yours, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Sinto. And I would like to start by thanking the Universitas 11 Maret for hosting this seminar, and also for everyone who organized this, including the technical people behind the scenes, who are the most important in webinars, as we all know, right? So thank you again also for the many participants who logged on. I saw that you come from various universities. I saw there Surabaya, Malang, South Borneo. So thank you all for joining this seminar. Now I have prepared a few slides, so I am going to share my screen with you. Let me see. Can you guys actually see my screen at the moment? Yes, okay. Thank you. So the title for today is Publishing Teaching Cases with Sage, especially on family business. Now, I would like to first argue why this would be good. So first of all, I think if you publish teaching cases, it could be good for your career as if you're an academic in an Indonesian university, because you'll have a publication and it will be internationally used, so it gives you some recognition as an academic and as an educator. Secondly, I think it will be great for your institution that you work at. because your university too will get recognition. And if you publish your own teaching cases, you will likely also become a better teacher, which also helps your institution and of course your students. And lastly, I think it's crucial for Indonesia. Why? Because as we teach, many of our examples come from the United States or other countries, and we actually have so few examples from Indonesia to teach about, whereas especially in Indonesia, but also globally, it would be so interesting to learn about Indonesian companies, given that Indonesia is one of the largest countries in the world. So please do consider publishing more cases and examples on Indonesia. Now, let me just show you my agenda. I hope you can see my agenda and if my slides are advancing. So I'll be briefly talking about what is a teaching case, how can you write one with some tips and some topics that you could write about, and how to publish one. And actually the publishing side, later on Rachel is going to talk more about this and a few resources. Now I have to tell you up front that in only about 20-25 minutes, I will not be able to teach you how to write a teaching case, right? We will need more time for this. So I apologize in advance if it's not everything you looked for, but I'm trying to go and do my best to give you some useful tips to get started. Now, before I do that, I have a little poll. So I want all of you to get ready to, vote on the poll. Maybe I should stop sharing my screen for a second so we can all look for the poll. And I'll ask Zuf, the technical guy behind the scene, that's one of our heroes, to put up the first question. So Zuf, we cannot vote on this. Yeah. Okay, so we can actually see the question. So the question is, are you currently teaching in a higher education institution? So most of us are. In fact, the numbers are going up. So about 70 to 75% are teaching in a higher education institution. I think we still have many votes coming in. So you guys are waking up, that's good. Okay, I think Zuf, we can close this first question. And now I would like to try to see the next question. Zuf can, okay, so the result is 72% for this first question. So maybe Zuf can pull up question number 2, whether you actually teach using cases. Cases are a great way of teaching. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay, I see the numbers go, I see you guys all voting. So far, it looks like about half of you do use cases for teaching. You can see the percentage going up a little bit to 58%. And seems about half of you have voted so far. Okay, that's great. So many of you already have experience, but a good number of you, about 40%, are new to case teaching. So I'll speak a little bit more about that later. I think Zuf, we can close this and share the results. So about 58% has experience and 40% has no experience with cases yet. So I'll talk about this. Now, Zuf, could we have the third question? And I expect that the number of people who wrote yes on this question will be less. Have you written your own teaching cases? Now, not every professor writes his or her own teaching cases, but it's actually a great way of engaging with your students. Okay, we see that. I can see the numbers moving. So we see about 1/3 of you have written your own teaching cases, which is very good. Okay, great. This is a great result. So that means a majority of you are new to writing cases. Zulf, can we close the poll and see the results? Okay, yeah. So about 38% of you has already written your own teaching case and 62% has not yet done it. So I'll be giving some tips for getting started. Now, so maybe we can have the last question, which is about whether you have published any of your teaching cases. Now, Zuf, could we try to get poll number 4? Excellent. Okay, let's see how many of you have actually published your teaching case so that it can actually be used by others as well. Not bad. I expected the number to be quite low, but so far I see it's hovering around 17%. So most of you seem to be quite new to publishing your teaching cases. So about half of you have voted. So about 15% of you have already published a teaching case. So that's great. Okay, now, so 15% has published a teaching case and 85% has never done this. Now, this is a good audience for this talk. I think, Zuf, we could close the poll now and I will reshare my screen. Let me do that now and go back to my slides. Okay, you can see my slides again, right? Yes, Ibu Svinto is nodding yes. Okay, now let me go to the next page of my slides. So I want to just show you that we are going to try to motivate you to publish your teaching case, and ideally with SAGE cases that we are both representing here, Rachel and me. And just if you go to our website, you will see this. So this is the SAGE Business Cases series in family business. Okay, so later you can have a look. I'll give you the link to the case, to the website. Now, let me start to talk a little bit about teaching cases. Since not all of you have actually taught with cases, it would be good to think about what is a teaching case and why is it useful. Now, a teaching case is really a narrative or a story, usually in writing, and the purpose of that story is for learning. So that makes it quite different from a research case, which is really has an academic purpose, for instance, theory building. So because teaching cases are used for learning, they usually do not have a solution. They're just a collection of information, and it's up to the students to come up with a way of analyzing that information. And that's a great way of learning because the students become very engaged. They have to have been given a problem and they have to solve it. It's very different from us telling our students a theory or a framework. They have to discover it themselves. And it so happens that this is quite an impactful way of learning. I think Harvard Business School was the one who championed learning with cases, but I think in many of the universities around the world, especially in business schools, cases have become a very important way of learning for students. So it's important to know that it's a tool for teaching and it doesn't yet have an analysis or a solution. Now, I think with cases, you can get magic into your classroom. Why do I say that? Because students are discussing the case, and as they discuss, they learn new things. They discover things that they had not learned before without the teacher actually telling them. And that is really a sense of magic. So your goal with teaching cases is always that the student has this aha moment, that they discovered something themselves. So when you write your case, you have to also design that aha moment, right? Students are going to learn through discussion, and most cases have layers, which we call scaffolding. And usually the students start by reading and studying the case themselves. The second phase may be discussing the case in small groups, and the third phase could be discussing the case in bigger groups, like a central session. And each of those phases have a different type of learning. And ideally, by the time they come into your classroom for the central session, you give them an additional layer of depth in terms of understanding the case. For instance, by linking it to a theory or a framework, which allows them to analyze that case. And if you master that process well, it's really magical in the classroom. Let me give you one quick example. I published a case on this company called the Wang Group. It's a family business case. It's about handing over to a professional manager. And if you read the case, you start, and it went wrong. You know, it was a disaster. The professional manager left in after 1 year. So the students start reading the case and they get all kinds of information about what went wrong. And in the beginning, they will think that the problem is with the choice of the professional manager. But as we go through the discussion and I'll ask them questions, they will realize that that professional manager wasn't the problem. It was actually the owner of the family firm that couldn't step back. You know, so it is designed as a journey of discovery for the students. And once they discover that themselves, they have the aha moment. So a great case always has a self-discovered aha moment in it. Now, let's go to the next point on my list, which is cases and teaching notes. Now, as I already talked before about how students learn with cases, we as professors have to work really hard to facilitate that learning. And aside from the written case that the students get, there is usually another document which is only for the professors, and that is called the teaching notes. And teaching notes will tell us professors how to teach the case. Now, they have a certain structure, but one of the things they have is the questions that you can ask your students to go through the learning process and to let them discover something new. And usually they'll give you the answers to the questions and how you can ask deeper questions for extra learning. Now, in the language of Harvard, they call this pastures. So there could be subtopics that you deal with before you integrate everything in a bigger wrap up at the end. And the teaching note will help the instructors how to navigate that case and how to lead the discussion. And maybe it will also give some extra information like readings that fit it and frameworks that you can use to discuss this case. So when you're writing a teaching case, you'll actually be writing two documents. One is the actual case, which will go to the students. And the second one is the teaching note, which will go to other professors, giving them tips on how to teach this case. And that's really helpful. I would also encourage you that if you pick a case to teach in your class, you also pick one which has teaching notes. So it will help you to make more impact for students in that classroom. Now, let me talk a little bit about the types of teaching cases. So the first way of distinguishing teaching cases is the source. So there are three types actually: direct cases, case based on secondary information, and experience-based cases. Well, I mean, there could be other classifications, but this is the classification that I use. The direct case means that you have contact with a company and the company becomes your informant. You do an interview and they agree to do the case with you, and often at the end they also sign a form saying that they agree with the case publication. Right? So direct information, you got it from the company directly, right? And that's, I think, the most common type of case, and also a lot of fun to write when you start to discover the issues that a company has. Now, the second type is the secondary information. For instance, you see something in the news and you dig much deeper with lots of extra information, and then you bring out that newsworthy case in a way that students can learn from it. So that way you don't have to speak to people directly. And the great thing is that you can actually pick a case which is attractive and people have known about it. But of course, it requires a different way of writing, and you'll have to make your sources very, very clear and document them, and be sure that you write the case in a way that the problem and the learning comes out. Now, that's the second type. And the third type could be an experience case. It's not actually that common, but this is more for if there's a certain issue that you can't really write directly about, but you're kind of giving an example that could be a combination of multiple situations that you've seen. Now, it's quite useful for family business cases because family business cases are often about things that are really sensitive and the family doesn't want to disclose it and they don't want to even be associated with it. So in such a situation, especially where you can also not disguise the name in a direct case, you could write an experience case, which does not fully do justice to the real story, but it's more like a possible narrative that you have seen. So it's more removed from reality. So 3 types: direct, secondary, and experience, where the direct case is actually the most common. Now, the second way of thinking about types of cases is the style. I already said that there's a lot of information in the case, but the solution is not there. So the cases differ a little bit by how much information is there, right? So the champion of a lot of information is the Yale type of case, where they give you just a whole bunch of text and totally irrelevant, and it's up to discover what is relevant. So it's another type of learning experience where the student has to frame the problem. The other one is the Harvard cases are a little bit more structured and typically also quite technical. And they almost always include a financial analysis component, and they're rather long. So you need to have really several hours to study them before you even come to class. Lately, we see a lot more shorter cases, and that's also the format that Sage is adopting, which is a more crisp and short format that doesn't require that much preparation, but still brings out that learning experience. And the last one could be special purpose type of style. For instance, if it's a role play or an exercise, then the case could be written in a slightly different way. Now, another way of looking at types of teaching cases is what is the medium? Is it text? Is it video? Some of my cases in my class are actually documentary videos, and whether it's a combination or hybrid combination of text or external sources. Last way of distinguishing different types of cases is by the level of difficulty. So you can imagine a simple case is like, here's a problem and this is what the company did. Is it good or bad? Or what can we learn from it? That's quite a simple case. But if I tell you, here's a bunch of information, what's the problem? That's much more difficult for students to frame the problem themselves, look for the right pieces of information, and then start to analyze it. So the level of difficulty is another way of distinguishing cases. So I talked about 4 ways of distinguishing cases: by the source, by the style, long or short, by the medium, is it visual or written, and by the difficulty level. Now, let me move to my next slide. Tips and tricks. So I hope that you'll all be ready to start writing a teaching case. So here's a couple of tips and tricks. As I said, I cannot fully do justice to this in a short time. But here are some ways of getting started, right? So getting started, I think you need a few ingredients. First, I recommend that you have a home for your case. Like your case fits into one of your classes. It deals with one topic in one of your classes. So that way you can actually use it. Rather than writing a case for a random person without using it yourself, right? So I think it's most useful to have a home for it. And you need a topic. And then ideally you need a company or an example or a person who has a decision to make that you can write about. And ideally it is a type of company or person that appeals to students, that, that will make them engaged to learn. And lastly, I think it would be good if you also had a framework or a theory or a lesson in mind with that case. And with those ingredients, I think you're ready to start. So we always work on different levels. One is the case that we write, and the other thing is how we analyze the case, which is not written in the case, but which shapes the way that we write the case. So these are the getting started parts. Now, The tricky part is that the case is going to give students ingredients in terms of nuggets of information, and it's up to the students to connect them. So the tricky part of writing a case is really to give them those ingredients and lead them a little bit, but not too much, because they have to go through the discovery themselves. So that's a balance that you really sort of have to get. One way of doing it is to have multiple perspectives, to maybe interview multiple people who have different views, or even interview some competitors. Or if it's a family business case, to interview multiple people in the family with different viewpoints. And then you can really make it exciting for the students to see, okay, I can see this problem from different angles. How do I analyze this? The way that you organize your case could be chronological or by topic. For instance, I could write a family business case, and it could be one paragraph could be about the family, one could be about the business, and one could be about the ownership. And in the end, I will use the 3-circle model, which has these 3 components, to analyze it, right? So in the case, I don't make it so explicit, but by organizing it by topic, it will be very easy for me to teach a framework using that case. I think I can give other examples, but maybe I should move on. Or maybe I can give you one example about writing the ingredients without actually giving away how to analyze it. So at the moment, I'm writing a case about an Indonesian bank called BTPN. This is not actually a family business case, but it's a case about digital banking. And BTPN was very good at becoming an early proponent of digital banking. Some of you may actually have heard of the Genius product or using it. And we wanted to write this case to showcase how banks can become digital champions, especially how Indonesian banks can become digital champions. And by writing this case, we are plugging little bits of information there that tells students that, oh, this is what they did, it's great. But it also has some downsides. There are some things that they have chosen not to do, and those things may actually become a disadvantage later. So their secret seeds of dissent are planted in this case, and students can pick them up. And when they discuss these, they can come to a deeper level of analysis. So when you write the case, think carefully about how you're going to present the ingredients, including secret little bombs, let's say, to help students to see the different perspectives and analyze it well. Now, the third point on my list is decision makers with good problems. I think this is the crucial starting point for every case. And what do I mean by a good problem? A good problem to me is when you have a challenge and it is not clear what the right answer is. It's really a difficult challenge. Because if the answer is already clear, we don't have to teach students about it. They can read. But when the answer is not clear, it's ambiguous, that's where the real excitement comes, right? So that's how you engage your students. So let me give you an example about a good problem. I wrote one case about a Malaysian company called IOI. And the theme of this case was, can Asian family businesses become successful multinationals? And the case follows this one company and it struggles in becoming a multinational. And through that case, we can see why family businesses will be better at becoming a great multinational, but we can also see what holds them back. And by giving that information, the students can then think about, okay, if these are the advantages and disadvantages, what can family business leaders, like the leader of this IOI case, do to make themselves more effective? So it's a really good problem because it's a problem that many companies have. It's not easy, but we can identify with the struggle that the CEO has. This is one example of a good problem. There are problems around, obviously. then if you write the case, you should also brief the decision makers that this is not a glorification of your company. We want to write about a good problem, you know, and we don't want to only write about all the great things that you have done. If you want to do that, you write a press release, not a teaching case, because we want our students to learn something difficult from you, right? So the briefing is quite important. Otherwise, your company informants will become disappointed. Last one is writing the story. I think attractive writing is super important. When I write my cases, especially I have a partner in crime, his name is Pasha Mahmoud, and we write very precisely every word we discuss. So is it the right words? Should we turn it around? Should it be at the end of the sentence? So very detailed writing is important. And also you can put in a lot of quotes. Sometimes you don't have to say it. You can use quotes or exhibits to make the point. So students have to discover it in the case, right? So try to make it attractive with great titles and different viewpoints and maybe a little bit extreme opinions. So I have one case, for example, where this one family leader wants to do something, and then I quote somebody else who says, it's a whole bunch of crap. We should be doing something else. You know, so it's exciting to the students that, oh, there are different viewpoints. What's my viewpoint on this, right? Okay, I'm going to go to my next slide because I see that I'm running out of time. Now, here's a bunch of possible topics for family business cases. In family business, almost everybody writes about succession, which is a greatly important topic, but also a topic where we already have quite a lot of cases. So do consider also writing about other topics that are comparatively new, like making a constitution. I can all encourage you to go to some of the Indonesian leaders like Ibu Shanti from Samudra or something who have done this, and then you maybe can interview them. You know, selling or exit or innovation, or here is just a lot of topics. I think I can also send my slides through maybe or make them available to you through the Universitas Sebelas Maret. So later you can look at it, but this is also on our website of the case series. So just to give you some ideas here of what you could do. Not just also, by the way, not just only from the perspective of the family, but you could also look at it from the perspective of an investor and investigate the minority shareholder rights. Personally, I teach a case on Bakring, and it's a great case to look at whether or not they have done the right thing for the minority shareholders, right? Now, this is something that Rachel will pick up on, which is how to publish your case and why is it good for you. It will get, Sage is very good in helping you through the process, but of course you must come with a quality document to start with, right? Otherwise they can't help you. They will pull you through the review process. And also I want to highlight that many of us are struggling in the COVID era, and it's maybe also attractive for you to see that there's a $500 payment if your case gets accepted. So maybe that's also good for all of you. And of course, the case gets used globally, which is another advantage. Now, my last page. Here's a couple of links to our website and the call for cases, and also the templates that you could use when you want to start writing a case in general. But of course, we hope you submit also to the Family Business Series. And I think I've just about used up all my time, and that's it. And I gladly hand over to Ibu Sinto, and later we'll do Q&A. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for such informative sharing, Dr. Malin. And then we have Rachel here, who will explain to us about the process of publishing teaching case in Sage. Please begin your presentation, Rachel.
Yes, hi everyone. Greetings from Los Angeles, California. Can everyone share my screen? See my screen? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, as you heard, my name is Rachel Taliaferro. I'm an editor at Sage Publications. I help head up Sage Business Cases, which is our digital case collection for the library. Just as a quick bit of background, Sage Business Cases launched in 2016 as an alternative to the per case purchase model used by Harvard and most other publishers. We publish instead as a full annual collection, and we sell that collection to the library. So students and faculty no longer have to buy separate individual cases. They can access every case in our collection through their library at no cost. We're fortunate to have seen great growth in the last few years. I'm proud to say we're in over 200 campuses across the globe, and we've really refined our editorial process to align with the AACSB accreditation teaching and instructional impact standards, which means our case authors can tout their case publishing on their CVs or use them when they're up for promotion once they enter the workforce. So that's really an added benefit for authors. Our cases, most of our cases are exclusive to Sage, and they fall within our Sage Originals imprint. These are cases that are acquired either by myself or my editorial colleagues or by series editors like Marlene. We publish almost across the entire business and management discipline, but we do have dedicated subject-specific areas, including family business, which is why we're all here today. So I launched, as a bit of background, I launched the family business series with Marlene back in 2017, I think, after noticing that there wasn't a huge breadth of material on family business within case publishing. As Marlene noted, a lot of the cases dealt mostly with succession, and there wasn't a whole lot of variety just in terms of seeing companies profile that came from outside of a Western perspective, or companies that weren't sort of already household names that had been written about ad nauseum by other case publishers. So we sort of saw that there was a content gap there and published our first call for submissions and started building the series. And I'm very happy to say that for the 30-year running, this family business series is actually the most popular series in our collection, and not only in terms of the volume of submissions that we get from authors, but in terms of reader engagement and on usage numbers from the staff and faculty and student side of things. So it's really been exciting to see that kind of engagement and to see the growth for the series lately. So I wanted to quickly go over our editorial vision for the series, which aligns to our broader mission for the overall collection. And that's to bring in family business cases that will engage students in the kind of critical decision-making and critical problem-solving that they're realistically going to face once they enter the workforce. So this means we are focusing on bringing in cases that go beyond those household companies that have already been written about a bunch, that go beyond a Western perspective, and that go beyond broad strokes theory. And we really want to focus on cases from diverse economic and cultural and geographic contexts, and on case narratives that highlight the many different dimensions of family business. Some of those suggested topics Marlene already brought up, things from family values to governance structures to the kind of everyday conflict management that is very specific to family business, where employee and employer boundaries might be blurred or skewed a little bit. So yeah, again, we're looking for cases that really reflect the reality of what a student's experience is going to be. Not every student graduates into a management position at a Fortune 500 company. A lot of them are going to be going into family businesses, whether it's their own family business or someone else's. So we really try to cultivate cases that that really bring out the very distinct texture of family business that doesn't necessarily exist in other businesses. So moving on, Marlene briefly touched on this, some of the benefits that we offer SBC authors. A $500 honorarium upon case acceptance. You retain copyright in your name. We provide a formatted PDF and a distinct URL and DOI number upon publication. We are indexed on Google Scholar, and as the map from my previous slide showed, we do have an international audience, and your case will be supported by our global sales and marketing team who really do great work in enabling discoverability on an international scale. But the thing I really want to draw attention to is to our review process. As Marlene mentioned, we do have a double-blind peer review, just as a traditional journal would. We have a 34% acceptance rate, so we are quite discriminating in what we accept, but we also want to give authors a chance to strengthen their case and a chance to revise. So one thing I'm really proud of is that we built into the review process a comprehensive developmental review, and this is performed by one of our in-house editors who will read your case alongside the peer review feedback and will identify points in the case where you can respond to the reviewers, where you can incorporate any suggested changes that the reviewers recommend, and where you can really craft your case to be the best possible submission, and you'll have a chance to resubmit and have the case re-reviewed. This has been a particular benefit for first-time or novice case writers. Going back to the poll, I saw that about 38% have written teaching cases and 85% have never published before. So for all of those timers out there, this developmental review is really a boon, and it's really something to take advantage of, and it's something we're very proud to offer. And we'll have an author speak a little bit about her experience publishing with us. So just to move on quickly to a very brief rundown of our publication process and the timeline. We do have a submission platform hosted by ScholarOne called SageTrack, where as an author you would be able to create a profile and work on your submission before you formally submit. We do ask for a case. We ask for a teaching note for all of our submissions and a title page with an author bio. The review process is fairly quick compared to a lot of print journals. It's usually returned within 6 to 8 weeks with feedback and a decision, depending on the time of year. Things have slowed down a little bit, so we're maybe authors do have feedback within about a month and a half. And then again, you do have the chance to revise your case based on that feedback and to resubmit. We generally have a 3-week turnaround time for that, but we offer extensions. We completely understand that people's working conditions and their writing conditions have been completely disrupted in the last few months. So we are very happy to offer extensions should you need one. And then the revision will be reviewed again, and that's a much quicker process. Usually within a week or two, you'll have a final formal decision on whether we're accepting, on whether we're recommending another round of revision, or whether we're declining. If we accept, we issue you your honorarium at the point of acceptance, and then from there, your case goes through our production process, which includes copy editing and typesetting and other general production processes that have to go in order to render the case readable on a web platform, since we are a digital-only site. And you will have a chance to review your final proof. So if you have any last-minute changes, if you have any updates to your case, you'll get a chance to add that in once the case has gone to production. And it's published as part of an annual collection. Sometimes the wait time between having your case accepted and seeing it published is a little bit long, since we publish only once a year. That said, you get to be part of a full collection that is being sold in full. So that really helps boost discoverability for your case. Marlene did talk about the types of cases. We do accept direct cases that are based on field research. We accept cases that are based on secondary resources. And we do accept cases that have been disguised. Unfortunately, as Marlene mentioned, some families just don't want a public eye into their inner turmoil, and some authors just have to change names or fictionalize a little bit. And you'll get help from our developmental editors on how to disguise that and how well it's been done, because our developmental editors will try to snuff out who the case is really about and try to see if, whether it's been disguised appropriately or not. And that's really sort of the whistle-stop tour for publishing with us. It's a very quick, streamlined process. Like I said, we do build in that developmental review to help the authors simplify the process so they have a little guidance. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have questions or if you're interested in submitting a case, please feel free to contact me. We are more than happy to look at early drafts and more than happy to give feedback before you formally submit. So if you have a question about your case structure, about your case topic, please feel free to send that my way and I'll be happy to give you some commentary on it before you submit. So I will stop sharing my screen and I think we'll be able to hear from one of our authors now.
Okay. So thank you for informative sharing, Dr. Marlin and also Rachel. Before we go ahead to question and answer session, I will sum up some important points from our speakers today. So when we write to when we write a teaching case, we have to pay attention. Some important points, I think, I try to sum up from our speakers. First, find topic from something around us, and then, but it must be interesting, absolutely. And then, second, we have to find key person that we can get data we needed for our teaching case. And then, third point is we have to explore the theory that fit with our topic. And also, we have tried to make good problems in our cases that challenge the students when they doing the thesis. And also, we have to write attractive and detailed story, great title, different perspective, and so on, that all makes a great story in our teaching case. And also, there is opportunity for us to publish our teaching case at SAGE with the process that Rachel has just explained to us. Okay, so now we come to question and answer session. We have several questions here, and I will read them for you.
Shall we ask
Okay.
Veronica?
Oh yeah, I forget. Sorry, Dr. Marlin. We also have, if I'm not mistaken, the name Seranita, right? Maybe Seranita can share with us, with all of the participants, when she has, when she wrote the teaching case and then published in SAGE. So, Veronica, are you there? Please share with us in this webinar. Yes, Veronica, please share with us your experience, Veronica.
Hi, good morning all. I'm Veronica here. So by nationality, okay, I'm supposed to start my video. Okay, hi. Yeah, by nationality, I'm currently working as a senior lecturer at Taylor's University in Malaysia. So I published a teaching case study with Sage Publication back in 2000 when I was doing my PhD at Lancaster University in the UK. So the case study was based on an Indonesian family business in Indonesia, and it was the whole process was very, let's say, very easy, very quick. And so Dr. Marlin, thank you very much for all the guidance, as well as Rachel. They have been very patient in answering my emails and questions. And publication, you get very developmental feedback. It actually helps you to how to move further in, I mean, the cliche of your story. How do you make the story, and then so you can, you know, make your student more learning experiential on it. And then a whole process is very easy. Just submit it online. There's an online system. You submit it, and then everything you can check online. And then, of course, the payment was very quick afterwards. And yes, so I saw one of the questions about anonymous. I published my case, anonymized everything because the family members didn't want to be identified. So I don't know if the has changed its stage, but you can anonymize. But when you have many family members involved, make sure you keep track of who they are. So don't get mixed up by yourself as author. I know sometimes you do get mixed up because sometimes we have so many key players in the story itself. And then, and it's very important for our Asians to be teaching case studies that is using the Asians example. I myself, I was teaching assistant doing my PhD back in the UK. So we had lots of cases from the US, from the Italy, especially Germany, but it's really we're lacking story from Asia itself. And now that I'm teaching Asia, and especially in Malaysia, our students are asking, why are we always using cases from the European or US country? Why can't we use something that's closer to home where we understand the context better, the culture better, and we can relate better? And then I know for scholars in Asia, you have a dilemma about Scopus. I know that our KPI is supposed to be publishing in Scopus journals, but okay, Scopus journals are more research, very dry, you know. I'm sure you can spare time publishing with Sage Business case studies because it's something that is story, and then you really have the passion in it, and you see the story, and then it makes a difference when you are teaching with your own case study. And your student will have more like, oh, wow, you wrote the case. Yeah. Because if you take a research journal paper and teaching case in the class, like really, who can relate to it? You can use the theory for teaching your story, the lectures, but during tutorial discussion time for group discussion, case is really the best way to teach and help the students to relate and learn. So that's all for my sharing. Thank you again, Dr. Marlene. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Businto.
Okay. Thank you very much, Veronita. Thank you for sharing your experience. It motivates us to try to write our own teaching case and use our teaching case in our class. Okay, then we come to question and answer session. So we have several questions here. Okay, the first question comes from Nurul Fauzia from Jakarta. This question for Dr. Marlene and also Rachel. What is the most important unique title or what we put in the body of the paper? So how about that question? Dr. Marlene, please explain your answer.
Okay, I think I got the question is what is the unique title, right? An example. I think I told you the example that I'm working on this case of BTPN, and the title that we have for the moment for the case is how BTPN became a digital banking genius. We use genius with J, like the product that they have, not with G, which is the Indonesian word. So it's kind of a playful way of promoting the company. We do think quite a lot about our titles to make them a little bit fun and attractive for the students and also informative, you know, so that they know how the case is structured. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, how about you, Rachel, from the perspective of editor? How about to write and to find the interesting topics?
Well, I mean, as far as topics go, I think you have a lot of leeway in making family business interesting. I was speaking at a conference to one of our family business authors about what makes family business cases so readable. And he said that not everyone has a business, but everyone has a family. And I think there's always going to be conflict and drama inherent in family businesses that don't really exist in other businesses that you can really play with and you can really emphasize when you're building that case, and that really pulls in readers. So just kind of letting the conflict of a family business kind of organically come out in the case during the case's journey is really important. And titles, fun titles are always great, fun titles with plays on words or with puns. But you also want to make sure that you give an indication of what the case is actually about. So don't just have a fun title for the sake of a fun title. It needs to also indicate what the case is actually covering, whether it tells what the journey is or what the dilemma is, or if it names the company in the title. That's important. I'll also say, Feranita mentioned, don't get confused when you're dealing with cases that have a lot of family members. Providing a family tree or a family diagram that sort of indicates how these family members are related to each other, that's pretty key, especially when you're dealing with larger businesses where a lot of family members have input.
Okay. So there are so many questions here, Dr. Malin and Rachel. So looks like our participants are very interested to write the teaching case. This is the second question, comes from Muhammad Arvinda from Ahmad Dahlan University, Yogyakarta. So Arvinda asked how to create a strong motivation when we want to write the cases. How about that, Dr. Malin? Maybe you can share to us how to motivate ourselves to write a teaching case, Dr. Malin.
Oh, okay. So I guess the question can be interpreted in different ways, like how can we be motivated, but also how to motivate the case.
Yeah.
But okay, so if the issue is really about how to motivate ourselves, I think you have to like set a timeline for it and not let it linger too long, because it takes quite a long time before you've done all the interviews and written the case and then the teaching notes. So I think that it's important to set yourself a deadline for it. And of course, I mean, in my opinion, writing it should be a learning experience. So only write cases that you're interested to learn about, because otherwise it's boring, right? So if I can't get excited by it, can my students get excited? Probably not, right? So pick something that excites you, that you learn from, and then set yourself a timeline to finish it. Those are the two tips I would like to give.
Okay, so Rachel, when we have to deal with the deadline from the publisher, then maybe you have any suggestion for us how we can motivate so we can meet the deadline from the publisher, Rachel?
Well, the fact that there is a deadline should be a motivator, that you don't have to impose one on yourself. And I think our developmental editors are pretty constructive in their feedback in terms of being really encouraging to authors. We do try to make our feedback be positive and constructive, and I think that helps authors find the motivation and the confidence that they have the material for a good case, even if they need to work on revising it.
Okay, now we have the third question from Lindiawati from Perbanas Surabaya to Dr. Marlin. When we write a case of one public company, should we involve first in the company of ask for their permission? So how we can get the company permission, and then how we can deal with that, Dr. Marlin?
Okay, this is a really good question. So when you write about a public company, you basically have two options. You could theoretically write the case as a secondary case, meaning that you draw all the information from public sources, and then you basically give the references for all these sources, and then you can submit the case. So in that case, you don't have to ask permission, because these are already public sources and you are referencing them. The other option is, of course, to approach the company and do some interviews. If you are going to use those interviews and quote people or quote the contents of the interviews in your case, then yeah, I believe you must ask permission, because they may not know what happens to that information that they gave in the interview. So if you do the direct interviewing, then you must ask for permission, and there's usually a standard form for it to release the case for publication that they will sign off. So two options to summarize. One is direct, then you ask permission. The other one is secondary data. You don't ask permission, but you make sure that you reference all the information that you put in that case. And the reference must be to public sources.
How about from the publisher, Rachel, about this permission from the company? Is it a requirement or something?
No, it's not a requirement. We do recommend it just because it's the best way to get transparency in your case and the best way to get the most in-depth information. And we do provide release for templates for the author to take to the company and have the company sign off on it. If that's not an option, if the company doesn't want to provide information, we do accept cases that are based on secondary sources and research sources that are publicly available. And again, we do accept disguised cases. So if there's not enough information online or through publicly available sources to build your case, or if the company wants to work with you, but they want to be off the record, so to speak, if they want things to be anonymous, then you can anonymize and fictionalize your case, and our developmental editors will help with that process.
Oh, okay. So thank you. And this is a question from Lohana, Universitas Negeri Malang. For Dr. Malin, is there any specific requirement for the case used in higher education? For example, scale of business maybe, and then the size of the company maybe, complexity. How about that? Is that any requirement if we want to use the cases for higher education? Dr. Malin.
Okay, this is also a great question. I would say no, because it has to serve the purpose that you're trying to achieve in your classroom. So let's say you ask about big company or small company. If you teach a class on entrepreneurship, and it would be perfect to have a small founder with a food stall as a case study. But if you teach a case about, if you teach a class about large family businesses in Asia, which is what I do. You look at companies which have maybe 10 listed companies, maybe more suitable to look at that kind of company, right? So it goes with the purpose. Of course, all the cases should stimulate analysis and inquiry in the minds of the students. That's how it's suitable to higher education situations. Yeah. Thank you.
It depends. Okay, so it depends on the course, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have another question from Rizkyanti, Universitas 11 Maret, to Dr. Marlin again. So what is the technical barriers in writing the family business cases, and how we can handle that kind of barriers? Dr. Marlin, if we want to write a family business, what kind of problems that might we have to face?
Okay, well, I would recommend that you read a little bit about how to write a case. So there are even books about this. Actually, there's a series by Ivy, which is how to write a teaching case. But also you could read books about how to teach with cases, which will give you an insight about how cases are normally structured. And then when you write, of course, there are a couple of barriers. One could be language. Because eventually it has to come out for international audience and it has to be perfect. And if your English is not perfect, which mine isn't, then you're probably going to need some expert help. Now, Sage can offer some of it, but you could also yourself already, allow others who are more perfect in English to read your case and correct it, or even if you have funds to hire an editor, which I do for all my writing, because I don't also trust my own English, even though I speak English all the time. So that's another barrier. And then of course you have to write in an attractive way, which it requires a bit of practice, but I would say all of you can do it. So with the right mindset and motivation and some practice, I am sure you will succeed in this. So don't let the barriers overwhelm you and lead you to not even trying, right? Please try.
Okay. So Rachel, can you explain about the proofreading that might facilitated by Sage publication?
Sure, we do recommend, if you are not confident in your English, or if you're a non-native speaker, or if you're a new speaker, we do recommend having your case proofread or copy edited. We do provide some of that in our developmental review, but obviously we're crunched on time. We're limited in how extensive the edits we make are. So that might not address every language issue. So we do recommend getting a case proofread or copy edited by a strong or native English speaker before you submit. And we do, I mean, like Marlene said, try to have a course in mind for using the case. And if you have the opportunity, try using your case in a class before you submit, because that will inform the structure of your case and which points might be more necessary than others in your case and which details students typically ask for. So having some experience actually presenting the case and teaching it and working with students, I think will help make your submission stronger. And like Marlene said, you know, there are guides for case writing, and like Fedanita said, it's very different. It's a different style of writing. You're not writing in a very dry academic tone. You do want to punch it up. It's a narrative. It's a story, and you can have fun with it. Like Marlene said, you can bring in quotes, you can bring in photos, you can bring in diagrams. If you have video footage, that'd be great too. But you can make it fun and punchy and something that students want to read. It'll work like a story. And then if you need to get very dry and academic, then the teaching notes is a place for that. But case writing should be fun to write, and it should be fun to read. And if you're writing and if you find yourself not invested in the story or in the narrative, then that tells you maybe it's not that interesting, or maybe students might find it not interesting, and you need to sort of structure it so that you have a narrative arc to it.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. That's very interesting. And then we have question from Mira Kartika from Universitas Indonesia. So Mira asks as Dr. Marlene said, this is a question for Dr. Marlene. As Dr. Marlene said, most of Asian family business are reluctant to have their names and the company names used in cases. Can we put other names or nicknames? This is the first question. And then the second question, also for Rachel, if family business have several problems, can Mira write cases based on each problem? Please, Dr. Marlene.
Okay. Okay. This is another great question about disguising the name of the case. So we all know how incredibly close these family firms are, and they really don't want anyone to know about their problems. They don't even want to be seen as possibly having these problems, right? Sometimes I give talks and then about such and such problem, and then they always like call me after, oh, Marlene, we saw that you gave this talk. Can you come to my office and speak to me about it? So they are very notoriously closed about it. Now, of course, as Rachel already said earlier, you can disguise the name of the case, even when it's a direct case where you do the interviews. I talked to you about the Wang case that I did earlier with a professional manager who failed. That case was also not called One Group. It was called something else. We disguised all the names, but I still got the signature of the company to release it. So they agreed for me to share the story for learning purposes, but they just did not want that story to be associated with them. So, but also if that is also not possible, you could turn it into a fictionalized experience type case, as what Rachel talked about earlier. Thank you.
Okay, Rachel,
nice
please. Yeah. Okay, Rachel, please give your suggestion about this mysterious things, unnamed, anonymous cases, like the question from Mira.
Yeah, just to repeat my earlier point, you are absolutely free to anonymize or fictionalize your case or disguise details if a family doesn't want to be identified, or if they agree to interviews, but again, they state that they want to be off the record, they don't want things necessarily made public. You're absolutely free to anonymize. We call it fudge the details. We're happy to accept cases, and we completely understand that a lot of family businesses just don't want their drama, their dirty laundry aired publicly, basically. So if you have trouble with disguising a case, or if you are not sure that it makes sense once you disguise a detail, our editors will help you and they'll give feedback.
Okay, Rachel, wait for a minute. This is also a question from Rizky, a PhD student from Universitas Gadjah Mada Jogja, to Rachel. Does Sage Journal only publish family business cases, or is there anything topic that published by Sage? Rachel.
Yeah, we publish across all business and management disciplines, and we have other subject-specific series. So if you have a business case that you'd like to submit, you can absolutely submit it. Just don't submit a family business case series, but we will still consider it, and it'll undergo all of the same review processes. It just won't be part of the family business series.
Okay, and this is for Rachel and Dr. Marlin. This question from Teddy from Ciputra University. So Teddy asks, we have family business center in Ciputra University, and we have the community also. Do you have any suggestion about what the best topic for our research in Ciputra University, and what topic that is now booming? Dr. Marlin and Rachel, would you please give a suggestion for Ciputra University?
Okay, thank you, Patedi. I have fond memories about Ciputra University. I gave it there many years ago, and also I wrote a case on Ciputra family as well. So, and I know that you have that fantastic community there in Surabaya with a lot of owners there living in the estate. So what is that topic? Okay, this is a little bit of how I see the field moving forward, because many of Indonesia's family businesses were basically really, taking off in the Suharto era. Starting more or less from the 1970s. So these were, at the time the founders were still quite young. And right now we are all arriving in this phase where most of these successful family firms are second to third generation. And that means that they will have a lot of problems, because we know that second to third generation succession is very hard. In order to make it happen, when you have a big family already and a big business, you're really going to need a lot of good governance. So all the aspects of governance are very popular in Indonesia, including writing constitutions, setting up family offices. This is relevant for the larger family. So this is one area that I think is very hot in Indonesia today. And the other one is also related to this. Because if you are a third generation, a lot of family members, you typically find conflicts and people wanting to get out. So the breakup and sort of dividing up the family firm, as what we may already see in companies like Sinar Mas at the moment, that will also be quite an interesting topic to look at. And then maybe the third topic is that the new generation is very different in their values. So often the founders, they come up with this cutting the corner trading business, like maybe they will pollute the environment or do something, right, to earn money. But the new generation is all about sustainability and doing something good. And how can these sort of old-fashioned penny pinching founder businesses be transformed by a new generation of leaders that have a great vision for the country and for the planet. Now, these topics I think are all very promising, but of course there are many others, and keep on doing all those fantastic things in Ciputra University over there. Thank you, Pak Teddy.
Okay, should be noted by Teddy from Ciputra University. And then how about your session, Rachel, for Ciputra University?
Well, I posted in the group chat a link to the Family Business Series page, and that contains a list of suggested and recommended topics. I'll just echo Marlene and say that there's a lot around second and third generation family members entering the business that are introducing a lot of new tensions that haven't necessarily been written about. Family trusts, how governance is structured, family constitutions, how family values are carried forward in those family constitutions and in those trusts. So there are a lot of potentially very interesting topics. I would say we have a surplus of basic succession cases that just deal with basic succession issues. So if you can, we advise staying away from that just because so much has already been published on that specific topic. So if you need more recommendations, I posted the link in the group chat and you can go through some of the listed topics that Marlene has crafted.
Okay, so thank you. This is the last question because of our limited time. The last question comes from Andina Rosid from Universitas Muhammadiyah Metro. The question to Dr. Marlene: where can we find the sample of teaching case? Do we have to put the theory? And then to Rachel, if our case have been presented in seminar or proceeding, can we still publish the case in Sage? Okay, we go to Dr. Marlene first.
Okay, thank you. Good question. So first about the sample, of course you can go to our page and look at the cases there and also the templates. There are other places where you can find cases, including the Harvard cases, the Ivy cases, which are a bit longer. But definitely also you can write to Rachel and she will give you some sample cases as well. The second question was about, do we need to put a theory inside? No, not in the case, but you may put it in the teaching note so that you help the teacher or the professor that teaches the case to bring the students to a higher level of learning by not just looking at the situation, but then to analyze it at the higher level of abstraction in terms of a theory. So yes, please put it in the teaching notes. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, how about you, Rachel, about the question? If the case, yeah.
Yeah, if it's fine if a case has been used in class and presented at the university. We don't accept cases that have been formally published already, just because that would violate copyright. So if you've published your case at another case publisher, or even if you've just published it online, we won't accept it. We want completely original, completely new cases.
So if the cases has been already put it in the proceeding, so we can't publish in Sage, right? If this, the cases is already in the proceeding.
If it's been submitted elsewhere and if an author is waiting on a response, we'd advise on waiting until you get the response if you've submitted elsewhere before you submit to Sage.
Okay, clear. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we have answered the question. However, we are very sorry if we are unable to answer all of your questions because of the limited time we have. So before we come to the end of this webinar, Dr. Marlene, is there anything else you would like to mention, maybe?
I just want to thank all 144 participants for asking such enthusiastic questions, and to the Universitas 11 Maret and Ibu Sinto and all her team to make this possible. And I hope all of you will at least try and let us know if you need more information to write a successful teaching case. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, is there anything else you want to cover?
Just a huge thank you. It's wonderful to see a big turnout. Very happy we were all able to organize and do this together. Thank you, Marlene and Cinto, for doing the behind the scenes work. Just if you have questions or if you'd like to read a sample case, please email me. I put my email in the group chat, and I saw that my slides were shared in the group chat as well. So please feel free to drop me a line if you have any questions at all. Marlene is always happy to give feedback on the series and on submitting. So we're open and we're happy to answer questions.
Okay, great. So before we end this webinar, I would like to thank to Dr. Marlene Dillman and also Rachel Taliaferro for being with us today and sharing insightful learning. So we have a good discussion today, and I hope we get a lot of inspiration to start to write a teaching case, our own teaching case, and then we have opportunity to publish in such publication. So before we end this webinar, once again, I'd like to remind all of the participants, please don't forget to take attendance by clicking the link provided by the host to get your certificate of this webinar. So thank you everyone for being here and joining today's webinar. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.